you probably know who this is. I've heard it said that back in the 90s, at the height of his popularity, that Sonic the Hedgehog was more recognisable by Americans than either Mickey Mouse or Jesus Christ. Now, I don't know if this is true, but one, I really kind of hope that it was, and two, the level of exposure that the character had back then was high no matter what standard you used to measure it. For example, Sonic was the first video game character to have a balloon at the Macy's Day Parade. Unfortunately, the balloon crashed. Anyway, the series itself is over 30 years old at this point, and that's an impressive achievement for any work of fiction, especially one that's centered around a blue hedgehog who runs at the speed of sound, and whose arch-enemy is an egg-shaped scientist who wants to rule the world. On a side note, doesn't Japan come up with some weird stuff? But it hasn't all been roses. Since the 90s, the series has suffered a noticeable decline in both critical and commercial success, and it's reached a point now where most people expect the newest Sonic game to be bad. Even if you're unfamiliar with the world of modern Sonic the Hedgehog games and its fandom, you may still be familiar with the Sonic cycle, as it's a concept that's been spoken about even in more mainstream circles. But for the uninitiated, here's the basic version with an example to demonstrate. Step 1. A new game is announced via a trailer or screenshots, and despite there being some apprehension, there's a general sense of positivity about the way the announcement is received. This is despite the fact that the previous game that was released was at best received with a lukewarm reception, but more likely is generally considered quite poor. This is not a reflection of the game's actual quality, just the immediate reaction that people had. Step 2. The new game is continually teased by more trailers, new gameplay footage, and screenshots showing more of the story and characters. The more that is released, the less enthusiasm the community seems to have for the game, and the general reception shifts from a tepid positivity to, please don't be bad, please don't be bad, please don't be bad, please don't be bad. Step 3, the game is finally released, and it receives a mixed response at best. Common criticisms usually revolve around a lack of engaging gameplay, a lack of polish, and a disappointing story, usually due to a more kid-friendly tone, or a perception that the story had potential but was executed poorly. And finally we have step 4, which, after a while, a year or two usually, a new game is announced and the cycle begins all over again. While the details or timeline of the cycle change from game to game, the general flow tends to remain the same, and you can observe this if you follow the reactions to the newest game coming out, Sonic Frontiers. We're currently in the second phase of this particular cycle, and while it remains to be seen how it's going to end, there may be a difference in this one, given some unusual steps that Sonic Team are taking. So far it seems to have followed the regular pattern. But what I've been thinking about in the lead up to the game's release is, why does this cycle even exist? Why does this franchise, which has varied wildly in quality over the course of its existence and has spent the last 20 years or so struggling against the success of its initial entries, why does this still garner so much devoted attention? At first, it would seem easy to say that nostalgia is the cause of this. People remember how good the original Sonic games were, released for the Mega Drive, and they have some affection for the series that played a part in their childhoods, but I don't think this necessarily explains the continued interest in the series. People have nostalgia for lots of franchises, but that doesn't mean that those series get to enjoy high-profile media spotlights for the past 30 years, and in most cases the ones that do reinvent themselves every 10 years or so with entries that garner both critical acclaim and attract new, younger generations of fans that keep the series successful and relevant. Now, I'm not saying that the Sonic series hasn't done this. If you follow the Discord within fan circles, you start to see three distinct groups. There's fans of the original Sega Mega Drive games, there's fans of the Sonic Adventure style games from the late 90s to early 2000s, and then there's fans of what we call the modern boost style of games. Now, if you don't know what these things comprise, don't worry, I'll explain that later, just bear with me for now. It's the presence of these three groups that may lead you to believe that the series has reinvented itself successfully over the years, but if you compare this to another series with a similar set of three distinct eras, you might notice that things aren't quite that simple. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is another series that enjoyed widespread attention when it first entered pop culture back in the 80s, and while the original black and white comic enjoyed decent success, it was the cartoon that really broke through into the mainstream. This initial success, however, eventually wavered throughout the 90s, but the series gained a following again after the release of the 2003 series, and likewise the process repeated when the Nickelodeon series came out in 2012. Each time, the franchise as a whole enjoyed increased media attention and an increase in merchandise sales. The same cannot be said for the Sonic series. The three eras of Sonic have not all enjoyed a comparable level of success with each other. The Mega Drive era is by far the most successful, both critically and commercially. The Adventure era was initially successful critically, but poor sales of the Sega Dreamcast meant that it was never as financially successful. And the critical reception has changed in recent years. Whether or not that's right or wrong is outside the scope of this video. The Boost era has received mixed reviews throughout its time, and sales of the games have been consistently on the decline for the past 10 years. This is despite the fact that Sonic Generations, the third Boost era game, is widely considered one of the best entries in the whole series. If you look at these two series, you can see the clear differences that they've taken, so it's difficult to say that this is the reason for the Sonic series' longevity. So, is there anything else that it might be? Maybe the answer is just sheer curiosity at the extensive experimentation that the series has gone through for the last 25 years or so. All the games haven't exactly been consistent in terms of gameplay styles since, I would say, 2003, with every other game drastically reinventing the style that the games use. Let's have a quick look at that. Since 1999, the main games of the series can be split into two predominant styles of gameplay. One style, dubbed the Adventure style, focuses on tight player controls in a 3D space, multiple playable characters who control similarly but who each have unique abilities, and somewhat explorative level design. The other style, dubbed Boost style, is more focused on one or two play styles, with a focus on quick reactions to avoid danger while maintaining a high speed. But even within these two styles, there have been games that introduce concepts or mechanics that don't seem to fit within the rest of the style. So, just for some examples, number 1, the Adventure style, but with guns and vehicles. Why would a creature that can run at the speed of sound need a bike? Never mind. Number 2, the Boost style, but with another character that plays like God of War or Bayonetta. Number 3, a game that abandons both styles to do its own thing and hasn't been attempted since. Number 4, a team-based platformer, which removes most of the speed from the game, set in the series focused on high-speed platforming. Or number 5, its spin-off, which is a Metro game for some reason. Or number 6, even in the games called Sonic Adventure, you have characters that pilot mechs and shoot things for some reason. Now, I'm not saying that just because the games deviate from a formula that they're bad. The Sonic games have never been afraid to try something new, and there's definitely something commendable about that. But sometimes this experimentation comes at the expense of the momentum and goodwill that a particular style of gameplay has achieved. It would be difficult to deny that it hasn't been fascinating to watch, though, over the past 20 years. Just this series that is flailing about, desperately trying to land on something that is consistently successful. I think that both of these things, the nostalgia and the experimentation, have contributed to the general curiosity people have had about the series. But I don't see how they can inspire the kind of fanaticism that the series enjoys. I think the answer to this question lies in the fact that since the beginning, the series has teased a deeper side to its world and characters, but it's never followed through on any of this potential. I'm going to give some personal examples that I've thought of just to help illustrate my point. Let's start with the main character, since he's the one that the series is named after. Sonic is presented in the games as a typical hero, always willing to do what's right, but while playing the games, I always got the impression that there was more to it than that. He doesn't just do it because he has to, he does it because he wants to. He likes it, he likes the thrill. You could compare it to the rush people get when they go skydiving or unsupported rock climbing. Part of the excitement is the risk of harm or even death, and an argument could be made that Sonic's desire to seek out trouble could make him reckless and even lead him to endanger the people around him that he cares about, say a two-tailed fox boy who idolizes him and would follow him anywhere. This is something that I've thought the series could have explored for at least a decade or so, and so it was quite a surprise to see the recent Sonic the Hedgehog 2 movie address this. This proves to me that there is some potential here. I'm not just reaching at straws. This is something people have thought about and seen before. Another theme that the series has leaned into is environmentalism. The main antagonist, Dr. Eggman, desires world domination, and he seeks to achieve it by asserting his technology over nature. He places animals into machines to control them, and his bases of operation are always some sort of technological fortress. Now, on the surface, this seems pretty black and white in terms of what the theme is. Nature is good and technology is bad. But is it really that simple? You see, Eggman isn't the only inventor in the series, there's also Tails. Tails is just as much a genius as Eggman is, and he has no problems using his inventions to achieve his goals. So why are Tails' inventions also considered bad as well? I think the answer is because Tails uses his technology in harmony with his environment. If you pay attention to his house workshop thing in Sonic Adventure, you'll see that a lot of the technological additions that he uses use materials like wood and string rather than metal. He seeks balance rather than domination. And speaking of balance, chaos is a big part of the series. You have the Chaos Emeralds, you have the Chow, which is only one letter away from the word chaos. You have the god of the Chow, who is called Chaos. You have Shadow the Hedgehog, whose abilities utilize chaos control. In fact, both Shadow and his predecessor, the Bio-Lizard, are human attempts at creating the ultimate life form, which possibly is an embodiment of chaos. The way chaos is talked about in the series gives the impression of this elemental force that only the ancient Echidna tribe understood the full power of. This tribe, which Knuckles is the last surviving member. In fact, if you look in the background of the games, even the earlier 2D ones, you can see indications that Sonic himself could be the ultimate life form. His super form, which he obtains by harnessing the power of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, is featured on murals created by the Echidnas, which seem to predict future battles that Sonic would be a part of. It's even possible that human scientists saw these images and tried to base their version of the ultimate life form off them, which is why Shadow is a hedgehog in the first place. During the final battle in Sonic Adventure 2, Shadow even makes explicit comments about his belief that Sonic may be the ultimate life form, which Sonic himself even ponders after Shadow's death. Spoiler alert. And I think part of the reason why Sonic Adventure 3 is such a sought-after game isn't just because of the gameplay that people like, but also because the two adventure games feature several of these dangling plot threads that have never been fully resolved. Now, you may agree with some of the ideas I've presented here, or you may have your own ideas that you feel would fit better, and that's kind of the point. Because Sega hasn't developed any of these ideas within the series to a sufficient amount, fans are left to build the world and characters themselves. This is why Sonic the Hedgehog has one of the most popular fandoms for fanfiction. This creates a problem though, as people become invested in the stories they feel that they have a part in creating, and so any future attempts by Sega to explore these characters at a deeper level might struggle to live up to the expectations that people have built about where the story should go. But I think that people are absolutely right to expect more from the art they interact with. Stories in any medium resonate with people best when those stories tell us something about ourselves as humans that everyone kind of understands on some level, even if we lack the words ourselves to express it. I think that's why the myths of old, or the works of William Shakespeare, or the Disney movies are still relevant today, even though most people don't think of it in that terms. And I think that the Sonic series absolutely plays with themes of a mythological nature, otherwise it wouldn't have attracted such a devoted audience. Now, there's going to be people out there who say that you're just reading too deep into it. It's a kid's series. What does a kid's series and William Shakespeare have in common? It's ridiculous. But I hate this idea. Imagine thinking that children's media can't include a meaningful exploration of ideas or themes. I think that anyone who actually believes this is either a jaded adult who just can't see joy anymore, or someone who's being deliberately naive. Children's media is filled with examples of stories that convey both simple and complex ideas in a form that children can understand. You've got the Disney movies, you've got Grimm's fairy tales, you've got The Wizard of Oz, you've got Alice in Wonderland, you've got an infinite number more that people can name. And the idea that this also can't apply to a series where a blue hedgehog runs at the speed of sound, I think shows a remarkable lack of vision. But I think that this potential that the series has is why people still have hope. They have hope that Sega will one day figure out what to do to evolve the series in a way that is substantial. Now, I'm making this video before the release of Sonic Frontiers, which is the series' first attempt at an open world type game, and it remains to be seen what that will result in, but I'm just like the rest of the fans who hope that one day Sega will crack the code and they will be able to fulfill the potential that the series has hinted at, and I think that would turn it into something really great.